The US dollar is being replaced, not by gold, not by silver, and not by anything that China is creating. It's being replaced by stablecoins, and they are worse than you can possibly imagine. Why? Well, let me give you an example. You buy $100 worth of stablecoins, and from that second, your money is out there earning interest for somebody else. Not a penny of it comes back to you. They are stealing your interest because Congress wrote a line into American law saying that it is theirs and not yours. This is because stablecoins are a new form of money, an evolution of the already broken fiat system designed to extract even more wealth out of the middle class. And who is all of this orchestrated by? The US Treasury, Visa, Mastercard, BlackRock, and the rest of that evil cabal. They built something that pays us nothing at all so they can take everything. So whether you own stablecoins or you've never touched them in your life, this will affect you because it affects the entire US dollar. So today we need to talk about three things. What actually happens to your $100 the second you hand it over? Who steals the interest on it? And what this does to your portfolio? Let's figure this out together. So look, nobody ever sits you down and explains this properly starting from zero. So let's do that. A stablecoin is a token that's meant to be worth exactly $1 forever. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, and nobody's buying one to get rich. You hand a company a real US dollar, one or 100, they hand you back a token. You hand that token back later, you get your dollar back. It's a cloakroom essentially, except imagine the cloakroom is run by a psychopath. You give them the coat, they give you a ticket, and the ticket is not the coat, but then you can hand the ticket back in for the coat. And they exist for a reason. Moving real dollars between countries goes through banks, and banks are slow, and they are expensive, and they ask too many questions. A token moves in seconds at any time of day, anywhere on earth. I'm in Europe right now. I can send $100 to a mate in Australia in seconds, and the fee is non-existent. The two big stable coins are Tether, which issues a token called USDT, and Circle, which issues one called USDC. Between them, that's most of the stablecoin market, although there are a few other ones. And you might be sat there thinking, well, look, I don't own any of these, so what's this got to do with me? Because when they decide to replace the US dollar, an already broken system, with something worse, it lands on every one of us. More on that in a bit. So let's talk about what actually happens to your money when you buy stablecoins. So you've got $100, you put it into a stablecoin. The company now has your $100. You have 100 tokens worth $1 each. So the obvious question is, what are they doing with your $100 while they're holding it? Because it's not like they're sticking it in a drawer with your name on it. Well, we're going to follow the journey that $100 takes. First, where does it go? They lend it to the American government, not by choice, by law. There's a law called the Genius Act. It passed in July of 2025. It regulates stablecoins, and it says that every dollar backing a stablecoin has to sit in cash or in short-term US government debt. Now, this law is passed, it's signed, but it doesn't actually switch on fully until January of 2027. The regulators were meant to have a detailed rule book finished by summer, and they missed their own deadline. Classic. I mean, don't you find it funny how the government constantly misses deadlines, but if I don't pay my tax on time, I have a SWAT team flying in on helicopters and taking me to Guantanamo Bay? I mean, not really, but you get the idea. Anyway, the stablecoin industry has built itself around the Genius Act, even though it's not fully switched on yet. So whenever Tether, Circle, and the other companies issue a stablecoin, they buy $1 worth of US debt to back that stablecoin. And lending to the government is simpler than it sounds. You hand them money, they pay you interest for a set number of months, and at the end you get your money back. The short ones are called Treasury bills. Right now they pay you about 3.7%. So your $100 is now a loan to the American government, earning about $3.70 per year, which answers question one, where does it go? Now you know. But the next question is, who gets that $3.70? Because it's definitely not you. And I know $3.70 doesn't sound like much, but keep listening because it all adds up. The company that issued you the stablecoin gets the money, and we'll come back to this because it's not the companies you would expect. It's actually a lot worse. But quickly, first, I want to discuss the mechanism and why you get zero. So the cloakroom is renting your coat out while you're stood in there and you're not seeing a penny of it. And that isn't only them being tight. The Genius Act bans the issuer of the stablecoin from paying you interest or yield on that token. Now, look, I know some of you are getting interest on your stablecoins. We'll talk about why that won't last in a bit. So the same law that orders them to lend your money to the government also orders them not to pay you any of the interest that's accrued from it. And you might be wondering why anybody would write that down. Why would a government pass a law saying a company isn't allowed to pay its own customers? We'll come back to that question too. I know we're going to come back to a lot because it's an interesting question and there's a lot to unpack. But first, just for fun, let's compare stablecoins to the bank, right? The average American savings account right now pays you 0.38% on your $100. That is 38 cents per year, pretty much, which is insulting, yeah, but it's not zero. Basically, a bank takes your deposit, earns $3.70 on it because, you know, they lend it to the US government also, and they pay you around about 10% of that, which is 38 cents. Now, what does a stablecoin do? A stablecoin just takes this one step further. Instead of taking 90% like the bank does, they take 100%. And this isn't me defending banks, by the way. I'm not a fan of banks. I think they are one of the most evil institutions on the planet. But now someone is trying to out-evil them. But who? Who could be so brazen that they would out-evil the banks? Well, it's companies you know. So in July, 140 of the biggest companies on earth announced that they are building their own stablecoin. Visa, Mastercard, Stripe, Shopify, Standard Chartered, and BlackRock, the biggest asset manager in the world. The list of companies should be popping up on screen right now if my editor is doing his job. It's called OpenUSD, and of course, all interest earned by these companies stays with them because conveniently the law says interest can't go to the person who handed over the dollar. We already talked about this. It doesn't say a word about it not going to Visa and to BlackRock. Now, some of you are already shouting at me because you're getting about 4% per year on your stablecoins right now through an exchange. You're right, there is a loophole right now where you can actually earn around about 4% on stablecoins, but that won't last. So I'm going to explain this mechanism right now. See, Circle, the issuer of USDC, takes your dollar, buys US debt, and earns interest on it. We already know this, just like Tether does with USDT. But then Circle hands it to an exchange called Coinbase. This is because Coinbase and Circle are related companies. I won't get into their history, it's boring and unnecessary. But they're almost like sister companies. And there's a contract between Circle and Coinbase. Coinbase is allowed to take 100% of the interest on every USDC sat on Coinbase. So if you store your USDC on Coinbase, they get 100% of the interest. And then Coinbase hands you a slice of it and calls it a reward. So the loophole is that Circle cannot pay you interest because they are the issuer of the stablecoin. So they pay it to Coinbase and then Coinbase pays it to you. The regulators notice this and are working pretty hard to ban it. And obviously the banks are fighting this too because the banks don't like the idea of you being able to earn 4% on a dollar. They would rather you put the money in the bank and get 0.38% that they pay you. But guys, ultimately, none of these companies are your friend. Coinbase is doing this because it promotes them, and Circle is doing it because they want more people holding USDC instead of USDT. It's like when your bank gives you a high interest savings account at 5%. It's just a promotion. They're not your friend. But I forgot one very important thing. Circle said something super important about all of this. They said, check out Nick's free guide on how to retire by 2036. It's linked below, and you also get my free weekly newsletter with it. Sign up below. I lied, Circle didn't say that, I said that, but yeah, whatever, check it out. Anyway, the next question is, how big has this whole stablecoin thing become? There's about 290 billion sat in these tokens right now, and it's going to get a whole lot bigger. And nearly all of it has been turned into American government debt because the law leaves pretty much nowhere else to put it. Tether, the issuer of USDT, on its own holds roughly $141 billion of US debt. That would put one crypto company, sorry, did I say crypto? I meant crypto? Anyway, somewhere around the 17th biggest holder of American government debt on the planet, ahead of most actual countries. And this is early, by the way. We're early in this. Citibank ran the numbers, and their base case has stablecoin issuers buying another $1 trillion of American government debt by the end of the decade. That's not that long away. I mean, it's like, what, 3.5 years at this point? And Trump, by the way, Trump has released his own stablecoin. Of course he has. It's called USD1. I'm not going to comment on this. You make up your own mind. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below though. But anyway, we've followed the journey of what happens when you buy $100 worth of stablecoins. Now let's look at what happens when you put $100 into a bank account. The bank doesn't keep your $100. Most people picture a pile of cash in a vault somewhere with their name on it. There isn't one. That's not how banks work. The moment your money lands, the bank lends it out. They lend it to somebody as a mortgage or to a business or to the government. A chunk of it goes to the exact same place that your stablecoin went, the same short-term government debt earning about 3.7% per year. That's where your 38 cents comes from. Your bank is the same cloakroom renting your code out while you're stood there. A stablecoin didn't invent this entire system. It just stopped pretending, really, which means a dollar in your account was always being used to earn interest that is rightfully yours. So you might be thinking at this point, what do I do? Where do I put my dollars? Should I take them out of the bank? No, cash under a mattress earns even less than 38 cents, and you'd probably be worse off. Generally, I wouldn't put my money in either of these anyway. You can be your own bank or your own stablecoin by just buying US debt yourself and earning the full 3.7%. A lot of people would argue that they don't want to hold US debt, and I don't blame you. I don't blame you. If you don't want to hold it, then put it in gold, put it in the stock market, put it in something. Keeping it in the bank or giving it to stablecoin issuers is basically giving these companies a gift for being evil crooks, allegedly. Anyway, let's talk about why the government wants this whole system to exist. America owes $40 trillion of debt. The interest on that alone runs at about 1.25 trillion per year, an obscene number, by the way. And every year they spend more than they collect in tax. So every year they've got to find somebody new to lend them the difference. For decades, the buyers were other countries. But those other countries are no longer wanting to buy US debt. It's just not worth it anymore. Even friendly countries like Japan, Canada, Taiwan have stopped buying and even started getting rid of their US debt. Then obviously there's China, who's not really a friend. They've been dumping US debt and buying gold for ages. Foreign nations do not want to hold US debt anymore. They don't want to lend America money. So America needs a new buyer. Why? Well, this year alone, they're going to spend 2.1 trillion more than they earn. And just like you, if you're spending more money than you earn, you gotta borrow that money from someone else. So isn't it convenient that they just created this new law that forces an entire industry to buy their debt? That's what stablecoins are. And why forbid stablecoin providers from paying interest to their customers? Because then the government can tax the stablecoin provider more. If a stablecoin issuer could pass interest on to its customers, they would do so in order to attract more customers, but then they would have less taxable income. So this whole thing is orchestrated to fund the US government's overspending. Now, I know some of you are thinking $3.70, 38 cents, who cares? And on your $100, you're right. Nobody's life's ever changed by earning an extra $3.70. But what about $10,000? $10,000 compounding over 30 years at 3.7% turns into $30,000. That's not nothing. Why give it away to these crooks running the banks or running the stablecoin companies? But really, the government and stablecoin providers don't really care about any single person. They don't care about your $100 or your $10,000. They care about how the number scales when it's billions of dollars at play. So right now, they are holding $290 billion of other people's money at 3.7% per year, and they are earning $10 billion on that. What a scam, allegedly. It's allegedly a scam. It's not really allegedly anyway. But that being said, there's some good things about stablecoins. We have to talk about the good things. I don't want to talk about just the bad things. They are genuinely useful, and I'd be lying if I pretended otherwise. Sending money abroad through a bank takes days, and it costs a fortune. I mean, at least it used to take days. It's faster now, but it still costs a lot. This takes seconds. Stablecoins take seconds and it costs almost nothing. And if you live somewhere where your country experiences hyperinflation, like say Argentina, holding US dollars in the form of stablecoins isn't too bad. Ask any Argentinian and they love stablecoins. But see, that is also exploitation because a lot of people in third world countries, Argentina is not technically a third world country, but you get what I mean, are going to buy stablecoins because their local currency is unstable. And we all know that Visa and Google and BlackRock, they're not altruistic companies. Neither is the US government, of course. This is a win-win for them. Passively suck money out of the poorest people on the planet by having them buy US debt. The government gets to borrow more, the institutions make more, and eventually the government collects more tax. So the big question is, what do we do about it? Now we know all this information, what do we bloody do with it? And this isn't me telling you to do the same as me, I'm just giving you an example. So my portfolio right now is roughly 30% stocks, 30% metals, and 40% in short-term American government debt. That 40% is me doing the exact same thing I've been describing this whole video. I'm lending my money to the government on purpose. The difference is I get that 3.7% instead of gifting it to a bank or a stablecoin issuer. I don't own stablecoins, not because I think they'll collapse, just because why hold a version that pays me nothing when I can hold a version that pays me something? So this is the whole thing with stablecoins. A stablecoin is a dollar that somebody else is being paid to hold for you, and there's a law coming that says that somebody can't be you. Your bank is the same flavor of evil, just marginally better because they offer you at least something. Money has never been a thing that you own. It's always a loan to somebody. And the only question worth asking is who is collecting interest on it. That's what you should be asking about every dollar you own. Who's collecting interest on my dollar? Right now, on your money, it's almost certainly not you, but it should be you. Anyway, check out the link below to get my free guide on how to retire by 2036, and I'll see you in the next one.